Welcome to the Superhero Sidekick Leadership Coaching Podcast with Joel Smith and Joe Baker. We're here to help you develop your superpowers. This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I'm Joel Smith.
I'm Joe Baker. We're not here to be the superhero. We just want to be your sidekick and help you along in building your business, building your not-for-profit. Let's help you grow it fast and really scale.
Be sure to check us out on Facebook and visit us at superherosidekick.com. This is the Superhero Sidekick Coaching Podcast. I am Joel Smith. My regular co-host, Joe Baker, is he's not in the studio today with us because he's with his son up in Yosemite Park, climbing mountains with his son. So they've got a big thing going on. He's probably surrounded with a lot of people and camera crews because they're doing something pretty historic. So if you want to learn more about that, check it out at samadventure.com. So Joe has a 7-year-old in there. Joe has been training him for a couple of years now, and they've climbed some pretty big mountains, especially for a 7-year-old. So they're doing something pretty monumental here. So check it out at samadventure.com if you can. It's pretty fascinating, his whole story. So with me filling in for Joe as a co-host is my friend Greg Gilbaugh. You may have heard some of his podcasts as a guest on our show. So Greg, how you doing today?
Doing great. It's good to be on the other side of the presentation today. Looking forward to hearing from Carrie. Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. And so, this is a coaching podcast, and I met our guest, Carrie Copley. I don't know, maybe a month or so ago. We met at a kind of in a breakout room. Actually, we got to chatting a little bit, and I thought, this is a person we'd like to have on our show. So we got to talk a little bit since then, and she's got a great story. But Carrie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. So Carrie is she's a speaker and trainer, and she's a success coach and the author of the book Finding Joy: Living an A+ Life in a C- World. That's an awesome title. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Carrie, tell us real quick, just a brief, a little bit about you and what you do. And then after that, I do want to dig into your book a little bit. I want to dig in and ask you some questions and hear more about that. But so tell us about yourself.
Well, I am a coach. I always struggle to define what kind of coach I am, and spent a lot of time about that. But the people that seem to be attracted to me are people who are looking for something different in their life. Oftentimes they name it like 3 or 4 sessions in joy. But I work with people who have big dreams of what they want their life to look, feel, and be like. But the fears of failure, time, excuses all compile into that, and they struggle. So we work together so they can actually create that A+ life.
Excellent. And how long have you been coaching?
Well, I've been calling myself a coach for 8 years, probably the first 3 as a new business, entrepreneur. A lot of that was trying to figure out what that actually meant. And, when you are self-employed, people just don't show up. So I've been doing it 8 years. Probably the first 3 was just a huge learning curve and what that even means.
Yeah, Greg and I can we can relate to that too. Just kind of slow starts a little bit. So, how did you come up with the name? Finding Joy, Living an A+ Life in a C- World.
Well, that's interesting because it was just going to be called How to Live an A+ Life in a C- World. And I got that second part from a question a friend asked me, a coworker, in fact, asked me one night, probably 20 plus years ago. I was in my mid 30s, and so was she, young kids. And she looked at me and she said, "Hey, Carrie, what letter grade would you give your life?" Well, I was an A type of person, striving for the best and success, but I didn't even have to think about it because the letter grade C- popped into my head. And the only thing I ever thought C- was good for in my entire life was algebra, just passing it. So it really kind of took me by surprise. If I said C-, oh my goodness, what did that mean? I mean, I was always trying to be the best wife, the best mom, the best, employee, the best community person, but yet I was giving myself a C-. So that's how I came up with that part. I really wanted to have that message go into, I had big dreams of how I was going to be like a speaker for Fortune 500 companies and try to intertwine this idea into how to live life differently, because when you are living your best life, you oftentimes have more energy and joy, and it impacts your work. It makes you do better at work.
No doubt.
But the finding joy came in one night, and it's a very spiritual thing. I woke up hearing, the book's going to be called Finding Joy. And I was totally angry. So I'm hearing this voice, the book will be called Finding Joy. Finding Joy. It's like, no, it's not. And in fact, I said, that's for church ladies. I have ideas for this book. And I finally just said, I mean, it just went on. And I said, I am not writing this down. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, I'm not writing this down. And to be honest, I've never had an experience like this. I really didn't. I'm tired. I'm being woken up. I'm not really putting everything together. And I just said, I'm not writing it down, but if I wake up in the morning, I'm going to call it Finding Joy. I woke up in the morning and bingo, Finding Joy was all over my head. I had been struggling with how to move the book forward. And as soon as I said, okay, I'll call the book Finding Joy, the writing just went. And I was able to finish the book ahead of my own self-imposed deadline. Wasn't sure exactly what it meant. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to add, this book is all about joy? And that whole insight didn't come in until after the book was even published. And now it all makes sense, but it didn't make any sense. I just trusted.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so you were really inspired, maybe against your will.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. It makes sense to me as I'm looking at it. You know, joy is, you know, living an A+ life. I think you can't do that without joy. And of course, you know, you can't really live an A+ life without making a difference in other people's lives, and they need to see joy in you. So
yes. Yeah.
Hey, Carrie, if I could ask, when you said after the book was published and it's all out there and you put your best work into it, and now all of a sudden you say, now afterwards, it makes sense. Could you connect those dots for us? How did it now make sense to you?
Yeah. Well, I met somebody through a networking event, and she asked me to go to her. She asked if I would be a speaker at her church women's Christmas party. And I was like, and speak on my book. And I was like, oh man, how am I going to make this for church ladies? Mm-hmm. And I am a church lady, and I'm thinking, how can I make this all connect? And so I just sat down, and in the book, it talks about 7 different secrets to living an A+ life. There's 7 different things. And I found scripture to match each and every one. Yep. And to me, it was like, duh. I mean, it's all so simple. It's so basic, but we get so busy in life, we forget. If you don't have a foundation in anything, it can't grow. Joy can't grow if you don't have a strong foundation. And that consists of like your values and your beliefs, your priorities, a vision. And too many of us just get up and go. I was like the Energizer bunny. I mean, I would just get up and go each day 100 miles an hour, striving for that success. All along, my life was falling apart because I didn't have my priorities in alignment. I was just maybe trying to please the world and do things right instead of without a foundation. And when you don't have a foundation, you can only get so far before it starts to fall.
That's right. Well, your story is pretty familiar to a lot of people. I think it's easy for people to get into that rut and, you know, maybe coming up with the wrong ideas about what success is and what brings you joy. And so you're not alone, but that uniquely qualifies you to be an expert in this area too. So that's good. Tell us more about the book then.
What?
Yeah, tell us more about the book then. What would readers expect to find if they read when they read your book?
Yeah, so I call it a parable. So part of it's true. It's truly my life, and part of it's just made up to make the story all come together. But the story is about how my life fell apart actually 21, 22 years ago when I woke up to my husband, or we were coming home from someplace, my husband at the time, and he said, I'm leaving you. completely blindsided. I mean, like completely out of the blue. And he literally did. And so not just me, but the kids. And so really going through that process, that I thought I was on the right path to success. I thought I was doing everything right. And why would something like this happen to such a, I'm a good person. And putting those pieces together. And so that's kind of the beginning of the story. But then the second part of it is that in the book, it talks about, I call her the CEO. It was not the CEO, came to me and said, I'd like to share the stories of how to live an A+ life. Are you interested in learning it? And I said yes. And the first thing is I had lots of friends. I was blessed to work in a social service agency where lots of my good friends were all therapists. And so I had a lot of help. But it was really looking back to understand how everything fell into place. And probably the biggest thing that I had to do was, one of my friends said, what part is your fault? So oftentimes when our life falls apart, it's so easy to blame everybody else. And can't we just see that in this world today? It's everybody else's fault if you can't succeed. And so really I had to look at myself and just say, what part was my fault? And that was painful. And then I had to start owning it. So it's not to ignore what he did, but I had to accept my part. And one of the biggest things is how I ignored things because I didn't like conflict. How many of us hate conflict? And
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so just, like ignoring it or downplaying it. And then, it goes on to learn that you have to have a vision for your life instead of just getting up and going. It talks about how you have to understand your why in life. So life's hard and our big dreams are hard. And if we're not grounded into why we want something, we're going to lose track. We're going to get busyness is going to take us in a different direction. So really, really connecting to your life why. And I like to help people connect all their big dreams to a why. Why is this important for you? But probably the biggest thing is just your mindset and identifying with the different mind games. I didn't even know I had control over my mindset. Like I didn't even know I could tell myself to be quiet and to change those thoughts. I didn't have a clue. I just listened to myself and I wasn't very nice to myself. I would say things to myself that I would send my kids to their bedroom for, like you don't talk that way to your sister or your brother. Yeah, but I did it to myself. And so really, when you learn how to do that, you can just, I think it starts with self-love and self-acceptance.
Yeah,
so,
it sounds like you really had an experience of awareness, just a whole self-awareness where you woke up to yourself and you could see yourself a little bit more objectively than maybe what you had before. And that's when I look at all of these things, owning it, owning whatever's your responsibility and having a vision, or maybe recognizing that you don't have a vision, or knowing your why, that type of thing. And even the mindset, you said, I didn't even know that I, could control my thoughts. And so, yeah, that whole awareness thing, I think, is the first step, and sure is a paradigm shift when it happens, isn't it?
It is, and it makes life a whole lot more fun.
Yep.
Hey, Carrie, could you paint a picture? What does an A+ life, what does it really look like?
Great question, because it looks different to everybody.
Okay.
So, the first thing, like, especially when I'm working with people or just talking to people, it's, what does an A+ life look like to you? So, what does it look like for your relationships? What does it look like for your faith journey? What does it look like for your finances, your career, your health, and helping them to define that? So, the world's going to tell us that an A+ life is that we have a certain income, that we live in a certain type of house, that we have our children are behaved and they never the ones that are going to drop in the middle of the mall and scream, right? But it's
I'm sure Greg's had a few of those.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just playing the percentages.
So it's just really personal. It's helping each person identify what does an A+ life look like to you? And that really helps with your life vision and your why when you get that centered. Like to me, with my career, it wasn't anymore like I need to be driven working 40, 50 hours a week, because I put my family and my faith way ahead of my career and my health. And just putting it, everybody wants a life in balance, but not a lot of people are willing to do the work. So it's finding balance within your life with everything, all the things that we have to juggle.
You had mentioned a couple times you used the word ownership. Either own your responsibility for the pain and the mess that you find yourself in, but also I heard you say you need to take ownership for the joy.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that a little bit? Because that's a very powerful point.
Yeah.
Take ownership of it.
Yeah, I really feel strongly that people have to we all have to step up and own our lives, whatever circumstances we may find ourselves in. We have choices. And so for me years ago, a choice was to make no choice. And if you make no choice, that's still a choice, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's stepping into what's going to get me closer to the vision that I want. And that's why it's so important for me to have some type of a vision of where I'm going, being open that may change along the ways a bit, but an overall vision. And it's not just what you want your life to look like, but it's what you want your life to feel like. And then look to say, okay, I goofed. I hear so many people who struggle with failure, when I think failure is one of the biggest gifts out there. How do you grow unless you fail? How do you up your game if you've never had a challenge? And so that's a mindset issue, not looking, I failed at that, so I'm just going to quit. It's like, no, how can I do this differently? How could I own this and change it?
Yeah, I like that you incorporate mindsets into that too. And I'm assuming you're kind of referring to a book by Carol Dweck called Mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great book. But it's unfortunately sometimes when we struggle with things, we tend to maybe not try to embrace growth. And if we're not trying to embrace growth, then it's okay not to embrace failure either. It's like I don't want to fail and I don't want to grow. So I just want to kind of stay the way I am. And so sometimes I think that's one of the reasons why we reject failure, or why we're afraid of failure, or we just try to keep people from knowing about our failures. Maybe it's because we're just not trying to grow. If we're really trying to grow, though, we're not really going to avoid those failures so much.
Right.
So they run together.
I call that living in the comfort zone. And the comfort zone's a nice place, but nothing's going to grow there.
Yeah, nothing's going to grow, and it will feel safe in the moment. But the problem with every comfort zone is it always starts to go downhill.
Yeah.
At some point, it does get bad, even though that's what you're trying to avoid the bad feelings and the bad circumstance. But it always leads there anyway if you don't do anything about it. It's like having a plant. If you don't water it and take care of it, it's just going to die.
Yep. And that is so perfect, because years ago, when I said I was living a C life, I didn't realize I was in the comfort zone. But if you don't pay attention to your grade, aren't paying attention to where you're at in life, it's just like in school. If you're not focused on growing and getting and learning, your grade's going to drop. So is your life. If you're not being intentional and having it moving forward, something's going to happen.
Carrie, I got a question with some of your clients when you say, hey, what, define for yourself what an A or an A+ life looks like. Have you ever had the situation or opportunity where they say, well, here are 6 things that characterize an A+ life for myself? Have you ever sat back and asked them, how is that going to bring you joy?
Yes, because joy comes up a lot. And I just want to tell you, before I wrote my book, or before the word finding joy came in my head, joy was not a word I used, Mm-hmm. So I think the difference between joy and happiness, and how I tie that back into people, joy is an inside job.
Yep.
We can feel joy when when we're struggling, when we've had bad things happen. And I think how, when they go through and they're really working on like an overall life plan, like their health, their relationships, their finances, their career, their faith, when you put that all together, and then we talk about, I think the second part is how is that going to look like joy? I really bring it in and we talk about in the struggle. So in life, we always have obstacles. Yeah. So helping them create a plan so that they can stay focused on that joy, to stay focused on that direction, even before the obstacle happens.
Yep.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes, with clients, and it's like, what's your A life look like? And when you look at it, you say, to me, that looks like that A plus life is defined as either busy, truly successful, but we're, rich, promoted, popular, famous, but how does that bring you joy? And like you said, I didn't use that word very much in your own vocabulary. And I don't think many people use that in their own vocabulary. And I really, really like, finding joy, because, it's almost like, who's grading your papers?
Yeah.
Who's giving you the A? Because who are you trying to appease? Who are you trying to please? And you're trying to live someone else's expectations for your life. So I think that finding joy is like, kind of like the plumb line. Let's measure things. Outstanding title. And yeah, I did download a sample of your book, read it, and it's like, I like where this is going. So
yeah,
good job.
thank you.
Yeah.
About a year before I even started writing the book, and I'm telling you, I was slow to catch on to all this. That year, I was still fairly new in my coaching business. I bet I had 5 clients, male and female, atheist, Muslim, and Christian, tell me, so they hired me, and they hired me for one reason or another. And I kid you not, between like the second and third session, they would say, Carrie, I want to change my focus. All right, what do you want to change your focus to? I just want to find more joy in my life. And that's why I'm talking. I was slow to connect it to the book. But when the first person said that, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I'm thinking that in my head. How do you coach somebody to find more joy? And really, it was working through that process. What does joy look like to you? Like have them define what joy was. And so that was just a really neat time. And it took me until after the book was done to even really kind of connect all that joy together.
Yeah. Hey, Carrie, this is terrific. You've got a good thing going on here. And how can other people get a hold of you so they can learn more about your book or learn more about your coaching services?
Yeah. Well, thank you. They can visit my website at www.loveyourlife2, and that's the number 2.com. And if they go under, I think it's resources or the book tab, you can actually download the book for free. So, or they can purchase the book or learn more about coaching. But to me, the book was, at first it was all about the money, and then now it's all about the purpose. I just want the word to get out, because I think we're living in times where people need more joy. And the message is so simple and people know it. It's just putting it all together.
Right. Excellent. Carrie, thank you so much. Thanks for being on the program. We'll have to have you on the show again here real soon. And so, hey, if you're out there and you're interested in Carrie, get a hold of her. She would love to work with you and help you find some joy. If you're in the business world and you're looking for some business leadership coaching, you can contact superherosidekick.com. Joe Baker he's a master at marketing, and Greg Gilbaugh is also a coach. Greg, how could people get a hold of you?
They can go to www.thekalosbusinessgroup.com, Kalos, Kalos, And yeah, I help people connect their personal faith with their business interests so that they can have a deeper faith, a better business, and a greater impact.
Yeah, excellent. And you can contact me if you'd like, if you're interested in leadership empowerment coaching at joelsmithcoach.com. But we would love to hear comments about this episode. We'd love to have you join our Facebook page at superherosidekick.com and subscribe, be a member. You can get an email whenever something comes out. So, hey, thanks everybody. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you on the next episode.